three professions. First of all, I speak to the nation as a former vice president who has been in a place of understanding bilateral relations and how that must be translated into benefiting the people that you govern. I'll also speak as a former diplomat who represented the interests of Zambia to Canada and 7 Caribbean nations, and explain how bilateral and multilateral relations must be managed in order for the nation to protect itself from foreign abuse. I'll also speak as one who has been a pastor for more than 41 years in matters of justice, equity, and the fact that all men are created equal, regardless of race, tribe, or background. So I come to the nation with that background, and I believe that this gives me some level of authority to address the current challenge that faces our nation. I want to talk about China first. First of all, every government has a responsibility from a diplomatic point of view to ensure that foreign people and investors in their country are well taken care of and protected. Security must be provided by the host government. It is required of all of us. All the foreign investors or foreigners working in our nation must be protected by the law, and that's a given. It's the same as when I served in Canada. I was protected by the Canadian law from any kind of threat that might be targeted towards me. It's a required and it's a normal standard. Having said that, I would like to go to our relationship with China. Our relationship and bilateral relationship with China goes back to the time and the day we got independent. We have been partners with China since independence. I remember as a little boy growing up in Chinsali, interacting with the Chinese at every level, because that many years ago, 52 years ago, they were laying the Tazama pipeline, 1,700 kilometers pipeline from Dar es Salaam to Ndola to Indeni. And I was a very young man, a little boy, I must say. But we mingled well with the Chinese. Of course, they married some of our sisters and cousins and produced, children along the way as they built the Tazama. But the point I'm trying to make is that there was no feeling that they came to dominate us, to abuse us, or to take advantage of us. We felt that they were doing a job, and we gave them all the support when they needed the support. And that's the way it should be. A few years later, they started the construction of the Tazara Railway. The experience was the same. So I can tell you that our interaction with China is not a yesterday event. It's a long time event. And therefore, it is for this reason that we must handle our current status in a professional manner, but also in a very decisive manner. To the extent that what a Zambian cannot do in China, a Chinese person must never even attempt to think of doing it in Zambia. That's what diplomacy is all about. It's called reciprocity. If China needs a visa from a Zambian to go to China, a Chinese will need a visa to come to Zambia. Reciprocity of diplomatic etiquette. That's what I'm talking about. Once that is compromised, you have a harmful bilateral relationship that must be changed, reviewed, and brought current to the norms of international relations. Now, as a diplomat, one word or one sentence we used to use dealing with relations between two countries was to the mutual benefit of our two peoples. Mutual benefit to our two peoples. In other words, the presence of China in Zambia must work to the mutual benefit of the two peoples, the Chinese people and the Zambian people. Zambians must be happy in the way they interact with the Chinese in their country. And Chinese must be happy in the manner they interact with Zambians in China. Reciprocity must never be compromised. It's the basis of diplomacy. And I speak like a diplomat. Now let me speak as a pastor. As a pastor, we ensure that fairness, justice for all is observed in the manner we handle each other. I'm not saying in any way that we should rise up against the Chinese in our country, just like I'm saying the Chinese should never rise up against the black man in China. However, there are certain minimal expectations from us that those who come to work in our country must be just, must also understand the basis of the Word of God, that we are all created in the image of God, black, white, or yellow. We are all God's creation. And we must all understand, if we want to work in each other's countries, that we are one people under God and not one race is above the other. And if anybody believes that ethos, they are welcome to Zambia. If somewhere in the littlest thought of their minds, there's a feeling that Zambians, because they are black, they're inferior, that person must not even be allowed entry into our country. If he's already in the country and it is discovered, we must take immediate action to show that that kind of belief and attitude will not be condoned in our nation. So, as a former vice president, what did I learn? I learned that the responsibility of those who govern is to listen to the cries of those who are being governed. The interest of a president, vice president, or a cabinet minister for that matter is purely to interpret the desires, the aspirations of the people you govern. You can never be seen for 1 minute, as though you are protecting a foreigner more than you're protecting your own people. The moment that shifts, you no longer have your people. They are no longer looking to you for leadership, and they'll take the law in their own hands. In a little way, but not a good example, it happened not too long ago in South Africa. When the ordinary South African person felt that the foreigners were having a better deal and better protection from their country, we suffered xenophobia in South Africa, and the blame was placed on government, that it is important for government to portray in the real sense that their first love is their people. They are voted by their people, and they must sit down with their people and agree on how they are going to relate with other nations. And that is a given. The moment that is compromised, you have instability in the country, like we had in South Africa with xenophobia. We don't need it here, and we must not allow it. Zambia has never had that history. However, I would like to propose today that the Zambia-China policy must immediately be reviewed. Government is actually implicating the Chinese people by being seen to be supporting them instead of the Zambian people. When Zambians are attacked in China like it happened not too long ago, the Zambian government was mute, except one minister was asked about what he felt about black people being mistreated and segregated against in China. It was all over social media. The answer, unfortunately, from one of those ministers, whose name I shall not mention, was that we don't have that information. As a matter of fact, my brothers are there, my children are there, they are not complaining that there's anything like that. Excuse me, this is not about your children. This is a truth that there is racism going on there, and here are the facts. Zambia should have raised its voice like Nigeria did. I felt so proud to be African when Nigeria confronted that and said, don't treat us like that and expect us to treat you well in our own continent. That is leadership. That is representing your people. That is what Zambians are looking for, a protector, somebody who protects his people. So I think that Zambian government cannot be mute when the Zambian people are being abused. When a Chinese man is when a Chinese person calls a Zambian a foreigner in our own country, or segregates against a Zambian on the basis of tribe. That's a riot right there. And I think that then we had the government being mute about that. That to me is totally unacceptable and going into the danger zone. And I'll come to my proposals at a later stage of what we need to do. But government was mute when that issue was talked about. When a Zambian, on the other hand, seems to mistreat a Chinese person, there is immediate action against the Zambian person. Zambians are watching all this. When a Chinese person ill-treats a Zambian, the government is mute. These are the things that are happening now, and that's how us as citizens are observing this. Government may have their own view of this matter, but as Zambians and as citizens, this is the message we are receiving. So if Zambians feel that foreigners are more protected than themselves, then they take the law in their own hands to defend themselves. This attitude by our government, where they have painted a picture that China is untouchable regardless of what they do, they are placing the lives of Chinese people in danger by the policy of this government. Government must be equitable in the manner that they deal with both Chinese and the Zambian people. When a Zambian person complains, they should listen to them. Mr. President, from a public policy point of view, the Zambians have concluded, rightly or wrongly, that our government has been financially compromised by the Chinese. Zambians hate that. They will not have any of that. They have decided they are not going to stand by and be recolonized by any nation, for that matter, including China. The statements from the ministers of labor, the minister of local government, have cemented this unfortunate position. And I would like to be as clear as I can, because I speak from all the three angles, as a diplomat, as a pastor, and as a former vice president. So this wealth of information is here for all of us. Now, I want to give a short example before I move into my proposals. Last year, a Chinese man insulted the Kenyan people, including the Kenyan president, and called them monkeys, black monkeys. Within hours, the presidency of Kenya directed that that Chinese be deported. And within hours, he was deported. That is what the Zambians are crying for. That's the protection Zambians are crying for. That's the leadership that Zambians are looking for. Not to allow a foreigner to insult you on your soil, a thing you can never do on their soil. Can you imagine a Zambian standing up on television or radio and insulting the Chinese in Guangzhou? It will never happen. But why do we allow it to happen here? And it's not feeling bad if we say that, to say they will take the investment out if we challenge them. No. These are international standards. We say in church, do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. If China wants to be respected here, they must respect us there. However, I want to mention that having served as pastor for 41 years, vice president and a diplomat, my responsibility is not just to condemn. But before I give what I believe we need to do, I wish to put it on record that as the New Hope Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, we condemn in the strongest sense the events of the last few months where Chinese people have been caught in mistreating or abusing the Zambian people. That must never be tolerated. And the reason why I believe government must do this is because as we sit now, there's a feeling that this government or people in this government have been given money in their hands by some Chinese that is tying their hands from leading the Zambian people equitably. Because if there's no money involved, there will be no fear to do the right thing. And it's up to government to exculpate themselves on this issue. This is the perception that is there. I'm a student of public policy. My master's degree is in public policy, the art of government. And public policy is when the people decide that this government is not for us, but it's for the Chinese. And they also conclude the fact that this government has been given personal money. That is why they are failing to challenge China. You are helping people to think like that by the behavior that we are seeing. It's up to government to exculpate yourselves by doing such acts as they are going to symbolize that you represent the Zambian people and not the Chinese people. But again, remember what I said in the beginning. We are not to segregate against the Chinese. We have bilateral relations that respect the Chinese. The Zambians must be respected. And the same thing in China. Zambians must be respected and the Chinese must be respected. That's what we call bilateral relations, which are healthy between the two nations. I want to propose the following. Number one, we propose that the government immediately deports the Chinese national who used racist remarks against the Zambian. Secondly, that the government interrogates in a public manner those Chinese accused of oppressing and abusing Zambians in places of work, and thereafter take decisive steps to protect Zambians from further abuse. Number three, remove all notices written in Chinese language from all public places and replace them with English, because this is Zambia and not China. And the official language of Zambia is not Chinese or Mandarin, it is English. Number four, call for an emergency bilateral meeting with China through their embassy to discuss matters that could injure the future relations between our two peoples. We must demand for mutual respect and equitable reciprocity in this matter. It's extremely important in diplomacy. Number five, insist that only Chinese with needed professional qualifications be allowed to work in Zambia. We must be firm in ensuring that the Chinese we allow into this country are professionally qualified to do jobs that Zambians cannot do. It is scary that today we have Chinese who have come to run barbershops. Excuse me, our people can do that. We have Chinese that are running shops across, just selling things at the market. We cannot allow that. We need professional Chinese. Maybe they are dealing in IT, or if it's a road construction, we don't need all of them. We just need those who will bring the expertise, and the Zambian people who build roads. We have built roads, we've built railroads, we have laid pipelines as we've been guided through the years. Our policy as a New Hope movement for multi-party democracy is to listen to the Zambian people, to respect their concerns, and make sure we serve them. That's why Donald Trump, when he became president of the United States, he said, America first. I demand that every Zambian rises up from every corner of this nation and places a demand upon this government that from this day onwards, it's Zambians first. And once that is established, then our multilateral relations with other countries will be normal. I thank you. brothers and sisters. Before we became bondmen on our own soil, we were a free people. We were widely regarded as the richest continent on earth. It was, in fact, for our wealth that we were colonized. It was for our wealth that we were divided and weakened. This day should remind us that Africa is the original cradle of human civilization. As we commemorate this year's Africa Freedom Day, it should remind us that we signify what the beginning of life looked like. It is therefore impossible to keep a people like us under bondage for too long. This day must remind us that we have our own heroes and liberators. We must publicly honor them and write our own books. Our history must be deliberately retold on this day. Known as the Africa Freedom Day, Africa Liberation Day, or Africa Day, this day carries significant worth for every African. It reminds us of our prowess as a people to free ourselves from the shackles of colonialism and creates hope that united we can defeat any enemy that may rise against us now or in the future. With our bare hands, we defeated the oiled colonial armies. All it took was a decision to never again be slaves on our own soil. The resolve was accompanied by fearless and principled leaders who, at the price of their own blood, unshackled the continent from slavery. It's for this reason every African must celebrate this day. Today, Africa stands as one of the most enlightened continents. It has produced great scholars, historians, scientists, doctors, and many other fields. It has produced the likes of Ali Mazrui, Chinua Achebe, P.L.O. Lumumba, and others who have ably diagnosed the core problem of our continent, from poor governance to high levels of poverty created by our own ignorance as to who we are as a people. We are now living at a pivotal time in world history. The world is about to change from COVID-19 from what it used to be before COVID-19. We are the generation chosen to shape tomorrow's world. We are the transition. My message to every African in the post-COVID era is to insist that we frame our own future. We must not wait for the West to prescribe a future for us. If we do, they will place us exactly where they want us to be, and that's at the tail end of the new civilization as they did before. In 1884-85 at the Berlin Conference, where Africa was apportioned to European countries, no African was invited to the round table. In Second World War, Africans were mobilized to go and fight alongside our colonial masters. Countless number of Africans lost their lives, but when it came to share the benefits of that victory, Britain, France, the United States, and others excluded Africa again. The only thing we got was a new name or title of the Third World. History is back again. Except this time it has found us grown, matured, and more enlightened. Accepting the backbench again would be an act of recklessness on our part. Some of the areas we must immediately start to interrogate are how to protect and manage our wealth, the natural resources of the continent of Africa. We must search for a new system by which we can govern ourselves, which meets our aspirations as a people. We must be bold enough to embrace our cultural values above those we import through television and the internet. We must promote our natural foods which kept us healthy all throughout our history. We must promote and sing our own songs. We must promote and wear our own clothes. We must be proud of our own languages. If we don't do our own thing, we shall always be at the back of the line imitating those ahead of us. This is a battle we can never win. We can't beat an American at being American. We can imitate them, but we can't beat them. Neither can an American beat an African at being African. It's easier to be a carbon copy than an original. We must not choose the easy way forward. The coronavirus pandemic provides a very unusual opportunity to reclaim our inheritance and our God-given values. If we miss this turning point, we may have to wait another 100 years before we can reshape our own history. The larger part of this transformation shall depend on the type of leadership Africa shall select beyond COVID-19. If it will be business as usual with rigged elections, Africa's plight shall be worse than in the last century. We shall rig our own future to our own destruction. Beyond COVID-19, African nations must realign their multilateral relations with the rest of the world. We must revisit all relations with China, the United States of America, European Union, India, and other G7 nations. Our relations must be based on mutual respect. To achieve this, we must leverage future bilateral or multilateral relations on our indisputable natural resources. Further, we must avoid the temptation of engaging the world's bigger economies as individual countries. We must leverage our 1.3 billion population as a continent when dealing with China, for instance. Gabon, with a population of only 2.2 million and a GDP of $16.8 billion, cannot equitably negotiate with China, with a population of 1.3 billion people and a GDP of $13.6 trillion. Today, we fully understand our problems as a continent. We can no longer continue to outline our mess before the world. It's time to change our history. To do this, we need new thinking and new leadership on this continent moving forward. It cannot be business as usual. We need to set up special think tanks which constitute the best brains and hearts that Africa has to deal with the new approach to governance and the management of our resources. Africa is ready to lead. May God bless our great continent. I thank you.